material in terms of like the story details very early. At I talked about this a couple episodes ago when I was speaking to my friend Daniel about Iron Man. When at the end of that he says, "I am Iron Man," and my head about exploded because this was something totally different from the comics. And yeah, later on his identity becomes public knowledge, but that was after like 30 years of him being, like a costumed superhero with a secret identity.
Oh, wow.
And his cover was, "Oh no, the guy in the Iron Man suit is my bodyguard." And they kind of lampshade that in the movie too, when he's saying to Phil Coulson, like, "Really? The story is he's a bodyguard? Don't you think that's kind of flimsy?"
Oh, great.
And
yeah.
So you talked a second ago about the things that we watched as kids and how that informed the idea that we have about what a hero is. And I think it's interesting to look at the stories that we grew up on and the figures that we looked to in terms of heroism, and to compare that to what's going on today, because I feel like when we were kids, a lot of these stories were simpler and less nuanced. There was a lot more of like a cut and dried, black and white, good versus evil kind of conflict in a lot of these things, and anymore it's getting much more. Again, just nuanced in terms of like, oh, is this person really a bad guy? And sometimes that's really interesting, and sometimes I hate it. Like, I can definitely say the movie Maleficent. I can't stand that thing because the evil queen of a fairy tale should never be a sympathetic character. Like, that's not what that story is for. And that story is definitely not for the purpose of showing you, oh, hey, look, you know who the real bad guy is? The white male authority figure.
Yeah. I mean, and really what it is, I mean, with our culture and, religions and ideas, this attitude that of relativism or of postmodernism that says everybody can be right in their own right, or your truth is your truth and my truth is my truth, and there's this level playing field thing. It sounds nice, and it sounds like share and share alike and live and let live, but when it plays out, it doesn't work, and it's like nobody's willing, and I say nobody, kind of exaggerating, but like nobody's willing to just stop and say, you know what, can't all be right. You know what, we really shouldn't lift this up or lift that up, because it doesn't end well, and it's not a good role model, or it's not a good path to go down. And that is, like you said, I mean, with things not being black and white and not being clear on who's right and who's wrong, and with really so much of our entertainment being so politicized it's one thing to disagree about, what's the right way to approach global warming or something like that,
right.
And that's one thing. It's another thing to just disagree about the morality of killing someone, or, there's so many different levels, but in the world we live in today, there's so much dead set opposition, regardless of the severity or the importance of the disagreement. And so when you have no absolute truth and everybody gets a voice and everybody can be right, and I don't want to get overly political, on the Geek podcast, but it's like it really sets us up for not knowing where we're going and not knowing why, and not being able to unify over what should be some obvious basic truths, and love for your fellow man, and taking care of a family, and and hopefully having leaders that we can trust and that we can support, and that and leaders who understand the value of wielding authority, and the scripture, the proverb that says, before honor comes humility. I mean, you've got to have somebody who's willing to, is like the shepherd putting the flock first kind of thing. And so when I look at a hero or when I look at a story in any genre, science fiction, fantasy, adventure, whatever, I want to see somebody that is not putting themselves first, is willing to learn, and is able to not just be a genius or not just be powerful and not just be technically gifted, but somebody who's able to make the right call. But if you don't have an absolute truth and you don't have a clear view of what matters in life and what matters in society, it's kind of hard to see those archetypes. They just kind of get lost in the shuffle.
Well, that is a fascinating, really excellent segue into the next thing that I'd kind of love to talk about. And we've mentioned Captain America, and so we're doing this rewatch and analysis of the MCU movies, and the one that we're going to talk about is the First Avenger. Mm-hmm. And, Captain America is a character that for so long was just kind of written off as this boring, jingoistic, just kind of very bland character. As especially through a lot of the 80s and the 90s, I think, when people were kind of starting to get disenchanted with with a high view of America.
Sure.
And there were I don't know if you're aware of there were several Captain America movies, like made for TV movies, that were put out in the 80s and 90s.
I've seen one. I don't know if it was on the Honest Trailers channel. Maybe they did a segment on a Captain America movie, and I was pretty. Oh wow.
Yeah, well, and I haven't actually seen these movies, but pretty much I understand they're universally considered to be almost unwatchable.
It's garbage.
And I think it's interesting as. Well, one thing that I was following with really close interest as the production for the First Avenger was ramping up was who are they going to cast as Captain America? And there were a lot of names that were floating around there. They were thinking about oh, you idiot! Now his name escapes me. The guy from Titanic.
Oh, DiCaprio?
Leonardo DiCaprio they were thinking about.
Oh, goodness sakes.
Right? And they were also thinking about John Krasinski from The Office. Jim from The Office.
That's really funny, too.
I think that would have been a really interesting choice. I kind of would be interested to see what that would have looked like.
Yeah.
Because I think he actually has some decent acting chops. I think he can be a very good actor, and I think he might have brought something really interesting to that character. But when I first heard that they had cast Chris Evans, I was as I was when I heard that they had cast Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. I was dismayed because
he had already done Fantastic Four at that point.
He had done Fantastic Four, but that wasn't why I was worried about it. What I was worried about was, having seen some of the movies he had been in, I was like, this guy has absolutely zero gravitas. How in the world is he going to pull off Captain America and it not be a joke?
Yeah, because Captain America has to be, it's the virtue that backs up the valor. He's got the courage. He's got the strength of heart that is so much bigger than the powers that he has.
Right.
The strength
and more than any and more than any other character who has been in a leadership role in the Avengers in the comics. I mean, when you think about who is the leader of the Avengers, you're always going to think about Captain America. Because he's absolutely like the moral center and the heart of the Avengers, and always has been.
And I think it's a really meaningful thing when the film is called Captain America: The First Avenger. That it's the Avenger, and an Avenger is someone who's coming along to make right what's been wrong, even if it's too late. Which I think. In the Avenger movie, I think Iron Man says to Loki that, if we can't save the world, we'll avenge it, kind of thing. Like, we'll at least, we'll chase evil to the remotest parts of the universe and snuff it out, no matter what it takes. And in the Captain America film, the first one, where he's a scrawny kid in Brooklyn, trying to get recruited, and he can't qualify because he's just he's not in good shape. He's just a scrawny little kid that can't keep up, and is nervous around girls and and all this stuff. But he's got a heart for his country. He's got a heart to to stand up and to stop Nazism. I mean, basically, I love how it's grounded in history, and it fits with the comic, as I understand it was always grounded in history. It started during World War II, right, where you've got this fictional character being introduced as kind of a symbol to kind of gather around and go, yeah, like, we're going to kick Hitler's butt, and we're going to protect our freedoms, and we're going to protect our people and our families that we love and our fellow man, and we're not going to put up with this nonsense and fascism and all this stuff that's trying to tear apart the fabric of humanity and of a peaceful world. And so that Steve Rogers is granted this awesome opportunity where he's given this super strength, and the vibranium shield and all this, is that he's gifted that because of his heart. He shows who he is, and then that's why he is selected.
That is a really cool thing. I love it when Dr. Erskine says to him that, explains that the way that the formula works is that it amplifies what's already in you. And that's why he was so interested in having him, because he could see his heart just by the, as you said, he was trying so desperately to go and fight for what he knew was the right cause. And, over and over again being rejected, and over again continuing to try and like doing what he could do, even though it was, it seemed like it was a futile effort, but he was totally undeterred, because he knew that I've got to do. Other guys are giving their lives, he says. How do I have the right to do any less? Right.
And what I love about what that makes him into throughout the film is he's a leader. We get a lot of, we mentioned Arrow or Batman, or really even Iron Man in some senses, kind of where he ends up, but like vigilantes. And then you get someone who wants to work within the system of the A word, the established authority, and try to accomplish good right out there in the open in front of everyone, not in the shadows, not trying to calculate his own sense of justice, even though he crashes up against some modern thought and things later on in the series. But that he has a good perspective on the leadership, and that impacts his view on the morality of war, and how do we tackle these difficult things, and just that leadership out in the open as a symbol is a lot different than the guy in the shadows that's getting the job done, but it's not the same. You run into these stories where the cops or the military or whatever is against Batman, or is against Spider-Man, or is against and it's like it's so much nicer to see a story where, for the most part, it's like, okay, this guy is at the front of the army, and he's leading, but he's not just a leader out there looking awesome. He's leading people that he cares about, and they know he cares about them. And when he develops, later on in the film, his unit, his team, and they're going to save. Let's see how. Oh, they got to go get the. I'm losing my storyline. They're trying to help me out here.
Yeah, they're going on the rescue mission, essentially.
They're going on the rescue mission. That's what I couldn't remember. he's getting confused with the Tesseract, and they're going after they're going on this rescue mission. Like, you see the way that he leads, it's just